Oh, okay. Yes. Well, first off, I'm thrilled that I get to meet with your faculty. And I salute you for the courage that you have to go through what you've been through, and that you've kept the school open for the children and kept them in the foreground is just remarkable. So I want to salute you. I've been a Waldorf teacher and teacher trainer for a long, long time. And now I've taken a lot of these things that teachers have asked me over the years and turned them into books, kind of like study guides, but also a few books specifically on Waldorf education. And the book that you have chosen is probably the most difficult book out of the 45 books that we've created. So I again have to salute you for your bravery to approach the question of what is the etheric, because if you can understand that, you can actually understand the entire world. And that's the reason the book has a subtitle, A Theory of Everything, because this has been a system that has been around for thousands of years, but Rudolf Steiner has made it applicable to our time. So again, working with teachers is what I'm really all about. Haven't done it for a few years, but I always love a chance to engage with teachers who are doing the good work.
And where are you right now, Douglas? Just tell us.
Outside of Detroit, I was in Detroit for a long time. I was in Hawaii and all over the place, charter schools, public schools, Waldorf schools, parochial schools, been a superintendent, and now I'm retired, and with my wife, we're authors, and that's what we do, and do our sites and that kind of stuff.
Great. So I'll start with the first question. And anybody who's asking a question, you've got to turn towards my laptop because the microphone is on the laptop, or even maybe come stand here where I'm. So in chapter 1, you talk a little bit about spiritual science, which is the term that Steiner gave to his research. How would you explain that to somebody who doesn't have a background in anthroposophy? They might be skeptical that such a thing would even exist. How would you explain spiritual science?
Well, Rudolf Steiner said that if he had his way, he'd change the name of it every week. So he called it the Grail science. He called it the science of the Holy Grail. He called it anthroposophy. Thomas Vaughan and many others used that name, anthroposophy, which means, of course, the wisdom of man. So the word Sophia is in it. Later in his life, when he put the foundation stone in the ground for the first Goetheanum, this beautiful building he built in Switzerland, he basically said that the being of Anthroposophia was one of the 3 inspirations for all of his work. And so anthroposophy can be considered a science and he used science on purpose because basically our modern materialist believes in science as a religion and believes in theories as truths. And so if you put spiritual together with science, well, that's an oxymoron, isn't it? So spiritual are oftentimes the invisible, the thing you need new organs to perceive. And he was, of course, clairvoyant from birth, but refined his clairvoyance as he went along. So anthroposophy is really his philosophy of life, which is also called ethical individualism and or magical idealism, the same philosophy that Novalis had, Frederick von Hardenberg.
Okay, that's good. Try to give you a little bit more of an idea of who's all here in the room.
I wish I was there with you because it's so hard to convey, Waldorf stuff to people if you can't shake their hand, and look in their eyes. So,
does somebody else have a follow-up question to that?
I have a question more about.
Can you speak loudly towards the?
Can you hear me, Douglas?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question about, the etheric of the teachers after a natural disaster, and that our etherics are very tapped, and that we're holding the etheric of the children, and of the school. And what would be kind of a recommendation or a practice or something you could give to us to do to kind of help bolster us during these times?
That's a very good question. And yes, you've all been assaulted physically, etherically, astral, your egos, you've all been assaulted. And there's a pedagogical principle that says that the higher body of the teacher works upon the body that you're working on. So for your 7-year-olds to 14, even though we know that in America they start at 6 many times. But when you're working with the etheric body from 7 to 14, it's the teacher's astral body that actually delivers the content that the child needs. So if that's the case, then if their rhythmic system has been disturbed, if their ether body has been disturbed, and their daily rituals have been disturbed.
Hold on a second.
It's it's the internet connection. We can't do anything about that.
Oh yeah, everybody on airplane mode.
I'll speak
turn our phones
slower.
off.
I'll speak slower.
It's not bad.
Okay,
You might not
we're
be
turning
saying
off
any
our cell
words.
phones.
Okay.
Start over, I think, because you started to break up as soon as you started to answer.
Just start over, Douglas.
Okay. The teacher's astral body affects the child's ether body. The children's ether body has been probably assaulted. And the reason I saluted you for coming back to school is to you're keeping their rhythms intact. The ether body is a body of rhythm and time, and it's the body that feeds them between 7 to 14. So the teacher is teaching elementary school. It's your astral body that can calm their ether body. So the more that you continue to do what you did before in the same rhythm, that's one of the most powerful things you can do. And then, of course, all education, Waldorf education, is nothing more than the teacher teaching who they are. So as long as you stay calm, you stay positive, you stay optimistic, then this will be some of the best nourishment for the children. But of course, you are in a sanctuary there, and it is an etheric sanctuary, and you had good water during this catastrophe. So the fact that you have nature there, and particularly the plants in your garden and the springs that are on the land, and good water for them to drink, keep up their healthy rhythm, and do everything you can to maintain whatever was their normal habit before.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question that they've been? Rosalind?
Mine just has to do a little bit linking with Nikki's. What for the children that are older than 14?
Yes.
What about the children older than 14?
Well, first off, I salute anyone who teaches a child in the high school.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. God bless you. There's a special heaven for all of y'all. Now, I've been a high school teacher too. So in the age 7 to 14, the teacher teaches imagination. In other words, literally creating pictures in the children's minds. The children learn how to do that through you. So as you memorize your lesson and teach it by heart, they just saw how your ether body works and your astral body, because your intent was to teach that lesson. From 14 through 21, so 4 years in the high school, at least, what you're teaching is essentially, Steiner calls it authority, but it's the respect for authority. So what you're teaching, again, it's the same thing, who you are. Whatever you're teaching, you're supposed to be really well versed in it. And the children are supposed to challenge you to make sure that you really are an authority in the area that you're teaching. So in this area, this is extraordinarily difficult. Your area just got hit with an astral disaster. So now these children, as your ego is teaching their astral body because of that pedagogical principle, your ego has to be 100% grounded during this time. And so whatever it is that you are expressing as your fear, doubt, hatred, or love, compassion, the virtues and the vices, whatever you are expressing right now in their environment is the medicine that they need in their astral body to confront this attack. It's for them, it's an astral attack because their city right near them is it's a disaster zone, and all the beautiful places in nature, the etheric places that they were going to, some of them have now been curtailed, if not destroyed. So it's your ego for those children. And then for the children who are in your kindergarten, then it's about imitation, of course. So imitation from birth through 7, imagination from 7 through 14, and the respect for authority from 14 through 21. So that first section of children who come to you in preschool and kindergarten and even first grade, it is about the environment that you've created that they can imitate. So if they're seeing you, and I know I've been told by other people, not just people on your mountain, that your water from your spring helped people drink. I mean, for the youngest children to see this, all the children of those ages, when they see these kind of things that you're doing, these are the healing moments that are going to arise out of this catastrophe. And I think that's the way that you would handle that to some degree.
Thank you.
Thank you for the answer. Mary, do you have something?
Yeah, I had a question. Should I move over?
Why don't you move over where you can see you?
Oh, okay.
Just move over back behind us. Whenever he
Hi,
stops talking.
Douglas.
Hi.
Move
Hi.
over so we can see
I had a question in your book. You were talking about
you. My wife.
he's my husband. I guess you can push me around like that.
Wow, that's amazing. You didn't.
Just to make you see.
Yeah. You're talking about entropy and ectropy. Can you just kind of explain that a little bit more? The difference
Yes.
between and how it applies to what we're doing?
Ectropy is the study of death. And the word ana means death. So to analyze means to kill. And that's what science does. They pull up a plant by the roots, and then they burn it, and then they look at the substance in it by killing it. Ectropy is basically, you could call it levity. It's what made the plant grow. They can't answer that. They can't tell you about why a plant grows towards the sun. They can tell you all of the effects. And that's what we're going to be talking about here with the ethers. The ethers are all invisible. In fact, parts of them are supersensible. So you can't perceive them unless you have new organs that can perceive them. And that's what being a Waldorf teacher is doing for you. It's training you to perceive the etheric, and if you're in the high school, the astral bodies of the children as they incarnate. And so I like to use this example that entropy and ectropy demonstrate the difference between science and spirit. Spirit is all about life. It's levity. It's not just gravity, so I want to clarify this. It's not just gravity that is entropy, but it's also the winding down clock. They would say that for some reason, something made the entire, well, let's just call it our solar system, our galaxy, the super galaxy, something got it spinning in the beginning, right? They can't explain why it started spinning, but they believe that after a big bang, which is completely silly, that that explosion caused all the motion that started all creation, which is completely silly. And I'm being nice to use the word silly. So that's entropy. And science basically believes we're a winding down clock. And at a certain point, our sun will go out, we'll die, we'll extinguish. That's the end of us. Where spirit says, no, tell me how that seed carries the entire future of that plant and its babies through other seeds and its babies through other seeds. I mean, do we really understand what life is? If you look at almost all science, it is literally killing. It isn't life, and they can't explain what life is. But the ethers actually show what life is. So when you say you have a physical body and then you have an ether body, Steiner would call that the life body also. So this life body is exactly what is missing in the understanding of science. So if you could add the spiritual science or anthroposophy to science, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to just abnegate science and negate science. It's okay a bit to laugh at them. Steiner loved to laugh at the scientists and their silliness. But we are supposed to realize we're not just dying beings, we're living beings. And as you're looking at a child or a garden or the etheric or other elements that Steiner said are the way to understand the etheric, those are literally what he called the last paths to spiritual initiation. So you're watching the ectropy, or what's called neg-entropy. That's the word they like to use, which is silly. Entropy is negative, but then they're going to make it neg-entropy. So I call it its true name, which is ectropy.
Great, thank you.
Just jumping around here. So, I'm on, page 26, here I am. And, I can follow all the play with 7 as the perfect number. What a delight. And I am a total buy-in on microcosm as the copy of a macrocosm. But where I go into like a dimensionless wonder is phenomena. All phenomena have their origin in vortices. So, and I didn't find a lot of discussion about that. And I love vortices, and I would love to hear you talk about them.
That's beautiful, because that's really the way the whole universe works.
Right.
And in the human body, it works this way. And so it's a little more complicated to describe the way the Earth works that way. But it can be found all the way to supergalactic, the center of super galaxies, which are massive, supermassive black holes, or what they call relativistic jets, which are what? They're vortices. The relativistic jets, these things that come out of the middle of now they know that the black hole is directly linked to them. What comes out of them is more energy that can sometimes be found in the entire galaxy. So in the middle of every galaxy, there's either going to be a supermassive black hole sucking in millions of suns, bigger than our sun, millions of stars, or when it goes into its opposite mode, it sends out vortices, and they spiral out. And sometimes they can go out so far that it'll blow your mind. If I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Light years, hundreds of light years away from the center of that black hole. And they go out in both directions. So let's call it north and south, but they really aren't. And what is that? That's 2 vortices that come together that make that black hole. And the black hole is what makes the entire galaxy. And so when you look at that, you go, okay, what does that mean? Because Steiner said everything in the universe is in the human body. So for Rudolf Steiner, there is a vortex coming down from your head that is moving at a different speed, and it's bringing in the etheric formative forces of the sun and the 7 planets. Coming up from the core of the earth is another vortex that is bringing in the force of the entire celestial stars. Now it doesn't seem quite logical, and you can't physically imagine that because it's too big to imagine. But these 2 vortices meet in your heart, and he says where these 2 vortexes meet, the human heart is created, and the human heart is an exact copy turned inside out of the entire cosmos. And if that's the case, then what's happening in the heart should be happening in our solar system. Yes, it does. In our own galaxy. Yes, it does. In the super galaxies. Yes, it does. So what we see there is the force of gravity and levity, is it not? A vortex going down that's gravity, and a vortex going up that is levity. And where they meet and they actually interpenetrate, he gives many strange descriptions of this. He says it's like the impression of a seal on a hot wax, or it is he calls it a box. He calls it the box of karma. He calls it the jewel in the heart of the lotus, the stone, the impenetrable stone. He has 1,000 names for what is in that place where the 2 vortices meet. So levity and gravity. What are the ethers? We'll just start off with 4 ethers. There's 7, but we'll start off with 4. Warmth and light are levity. Sound and life are what we on Earth call gravity. So the interchange and expansion and contraction of these 2 polar sets of forces are in fact what we on Earth would kind of describe as gravity and levity as they meet. And in the human being who stands up against gravity and yet has the levity to rise in their thinking into the cosmos, you get to see gravity and levity happening at the same time. And Rudolf Steiner often points to this, and he says that it's a key factor in education. I could go into it in great detail. It's in our other books. It's in the Gospel Sophia book, volume 2, where it's described in detail. And then also, it's rather complicated, but I hope that answers your question. Please ask a follow-up question if I didn't quite get to the point you wanted.
No, it's very exciting. I'm doing a happy dance about it. But what I also want to ask is the pulse of this. So, you have these forces that spin in and forces that spin out, and there's this pulse of centripetal. Is that in that meeting of these 2 vortices? Do you think of the vortices as having a particular spin in and then spin out and a spin in, and if there is this pulse of life, is that in that thought?
Absolutely. And you can see it in the galaxy and what's called the galactic current. What we call it in the human body is the human aura, but it creates 3 separate torus fields. A torus field from your head, a torus field from your heart, and a torus field from your will, just below your belly button. And when those 3 meet in coherence, they actually expand your aura, and it can expand your aura to be, much greater. And Steiner even gives numbers on that and even what that looks like. But yes, it's that pulsing, and that pulsing is doing what? It's bringing in breath from the outside and turning it into fire, really. And then that fire feeds the blood, and then the blood carries your consciousness, your I am. It's much more complicated than that, but essentially, it's a bellows. And all the ancient traditions, and Steiner points out that C.G. Harrison points this out. He says there's 3 spiritual maxims, and one of them is that all things are created from vortices. And that's in the C.G. Harrison's book, The Transcendental Universe. But Steiner says it too, and it's in my books, and it's in that book at the somewhere in the Eternal Ethers. There is a description of this. But I also give descriptions of it pedagogically, and also descriptions of it quite what you'd call scientific or even mechanical, because it has a mechanical potentiality to it that can be figured. For your instance, your heart is a magneto-hydrodynamic generator. In your stomach, you are creating cold fission, and in your heart, a cold fission, and in your heart, you're creating cold fusion. But this is done because you have this fantastic generator. Your heart generates 100 times more energy than your brain does, and yet they want to believe that electricity is created in the brain, which of course it isn't. It's created in the heart as the main generator of that kind of energy, because you're bringing in the forces of the sun and the 7 planets to meet the forces of all the stars, the etheric formative forces, and when they merge, it creates your heart, which is who you are in the past, the present, and the future. And that's what the ethers do. They tell you all about the past, the present, and the future. They predict the future more than any other theory, and especially any theory of everything, because most of the theories of everything are not complete.
That's great, Douglas. Since we're teachers, we're elementary teachers, I'm thinking about the cycle of 7 that you go into in the 2nd chapter. The most obvious thing that comes to mind as a teacher is grades 1 through 7. Now, I've always heard that Rudolf Steiner thought originally that the elementary school should be 1st through 7th grade, and that the 8th grade was a compromise. But can you say anything about that cycle of grades 1 through 7 as it relates to all the other cycles of 7 in chapter 2 of your book? and then the relations to minerals and metals and plants. Did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And that chapter is so heavy. There's so many charts in there. If you could understand all those charts simultaneously in your brain, you would burn up into just a pile of ashes, I think. Matter of fact, I'm certain of it, Steiner actually said that. He said if you can feel the work of the hierarchies in your body, it would be a sounding and a brilliantness of imagery, and you would hear the word of creation so powerfully it would burn you up. He literally said that. So the child from let's just call it first grade through 7, though we know that is not right, but it's age 7 through 14. And yes, you're the only person I know that ever said it properly. 8th grade is a compromise. That's the exact word he used. And what did he mean by that? He meant that 8th grade is a repeat. And he says for us to do this. 8th grade, you're supposed to repeat everything they ever learned in grade 1 through 7, but at a higher level as a person who is now in space and time on the earth as a human being who can literally meet you as an individual. And that is incredibly hard to do. And I don't know any teacher that has ever been able to successfully teach a Waldorf 8th grade. And also remember that in many schools, they have the junior high age, and sometimes they'll make it 6th, 7th, 8th, sometimes they'll make it 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, have a cadre of teachers who help the class teacher that goes through it with the class. So the curriculum for what we call the junior high school in America is incredibly complicated. Now, going back to what happens in the archetypal period of age 7 through 14, you're going to see everything in there. Steiner said that the ancient Saturn, ancient Sun, ancient Moon, Earth, future Jupiter, future Venus, future Vulcan, the entire, what he calls Manvantara, or it's actually the Mahapara Manvantara, the entire cycle of 7, creating a human being out of nothingness into being an angel, well, actually beyond an angel, but I'll leave it in the angelic realm, angel, archangel, archai. That's all imprinted in the child, and you're watching that in the child, and you're teaching that in the child. That's the reason that you won't find anyone else that I know of that has ever put this into a form that could make sense of Steiner's curriculum. You can't make sense of it chronologically. You have to look at it psychologically. And then when you look at what he said, because remember, one of the big teachers of his time was Haeckel, who said that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. The development of the individual recapitulates the entire development of humanity. That is true, and he says it again and again, especially in his early years. He says it again and again, especially in the womb. The 10 months in the womb are the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, and that's the reason that you can look at a child, look at these descriptions of the incarnations of Vishnu and see the child in utero. But after that, from 7 to 14 is when their ether body that came from the celestial world comes in down through their head and slowly moves down their throat and down into their heart. And that ether head is old. It's born ancient with all the wisdom that are in those charts of 7, all in the child. And it comes down through their etheric head into their etheric heart, and then later their astral heart imprints upon it. But the point is that everything in there, those correspondences are in the human body. They're in the manifestation of the world. They are in the 7 planets, the 7 Elohim. Everything is 7, Steiner said. Any complete system is a system of 7. With the human being, it's the physical, etheric, astral, the ego, the spirit self, life, spirit, human. So that's the 7. But the 7 is absolutely key, and the reason is because the planets, the trees, take their vibration from the 7 planets, including Sun as a planet. And those vibrations create metals, they create minerals, they create plants, they create species, they create types of plants. You can look at a plant and tell which influence it had from that one particular planet. So these impressions of the seven are in everything. But remember, we are in the fourth stage. We haven't moved to fifth, sixth, seventh. And so when you look at that thing on the butterfly, I mean, how many of us knew that the butterfly had to have a fourth incarnation very quickly before it was a butterfly that could fly off to Capistrano, before it was the butterfly that had an awareness of that? Well, we are humans. And so we're in that fourth stage. We're the same thing. And in this age, we are supposed to realize that we turn from a caterpillar through a chrysalis into a butterfly, and we're supposed to fly off into the fifth, sixth, seventh future incarnations of the earth. And we are working on them now when we work on our astral body, our etheric body, our physical body, to create what Steiner calls moral imagination, moral inspiration, moral intuition. So there's the seven, but the seven is not complete. That's my emphasis here. Seven is not complete yet, but we have the benefit of knowing what it's going to turn into in a general sense. As Steiner said, the divine plan can be predicted, but humans can't be predicted. So he can't predict exactly the date, the time that this will happen, but he can predict the way that it's going to happen. And that's what the seven is there to teach us.
I'm just a pile of ash.
I have a quick question.
Scotty, yeah, come on this camera.
Hi Douglas, I'm Scotty. Regarding the planets.
Woodworking teacher.
Yes.
Brave man.
And some wild skills as well. Regarding the names of the planets, the seven planets, past and present and future, you state that they're not exactly the same then as they are now and as they will be. I'm curious of Vulcan. If Vulcan is a future name for the sun that we will have, you also say that the sun of the past is not the same sun we have currently. And so, yeah, I was curious of Vulcan.
Scotty, that's why people give up on anthroposophy. Because it's so complicated. So here's the deal. The sun, when he says the ancient Saturn, ancient sun, ancient moon, and then earth, that has nothing to do with the moon, with the sun, or with Saturn. The only thing it kind of has to do with is the first period of Saturn did leave what we call now the planet Saturn as basically the dross, the heavy, concentrated, condensed dross of that period. The period of ancient sun left Jupiter as the dross. The period of ancient moon left the asteroid belt and Mars. So those are quite different. Now, it gets way more complicated because Steiner has a thing called occult Venus and occult Mercury. I thought you were going to ask about that, so I think I should address it. Sometimes when he's referring to Venus, he's referring to Mercury, and sometimes when he's referring to Mercury, he's referring to Venus. And that is because those, as we look at the outer planets, that's the past, and they've left a record of us for to see it. But remember, those were all created brand new again in this fourth period. Those outer planets and inner planets weren't there in the past three periods. They're only there now as a representation of the past. The Earth is the present, and the future is, I'm going to use normal terms, Venus, Mercury, Vulcan, and the Sun. And he says Vulcan is a planet that is there right now. Scientists can have noted a, how do you say it, a perturbation. Is that how you say it? A perturbation in the movement of the planets, particularly Mercury, and they have derived the idea that Vulcan is there. But their silly idea is that Vulcan is always on the other side of the sun, so you can't see it. Steiner said it just hasn't condensed enough for us to see it. Now, more complicated, when we go to Jupiter, when we're no longer an Earth, and we have a long time still being the Earth, but when we go to Jupiter, at the very end of Jupiter, also in future Venus and in future Vulcan, we will be united with the sun again, but it won't be the sun that we are seeing now, because what we see now is a real illusion. It is not what people think, and it's certainly not what the scientists think. He said it was a white hole. Steiner says it's a white hole, and that you're actually looking into darkness. And that's the reason sunspots show you the inside of the sun. What do you see? Nothing. So the sun itself transforms and goes through prolayas. It grows and then it contracts like a chrysalis. When it comes out again, it has all the characteristics of the past taken to a higher level on the vortex, as it were. So the sun will be merging with the earth in different ways, even in the earth incarnation. In the end, the moon is going to join with the earth in 6,000 years, but that's not the end of the earth. And then the earth is going to fall apart. That's our job. Our job is to redeem the mineral kingdom, what we walk on, what we think is the solid, physical, forever earth. No, it's going to melt again back into the astral realm where it came from in the end. So at that point, we will merge with the sun. So those of you who feel like sometimes, you belong to the esoteric lodge on the sun, the mother lodge, Steiner calls it, that's because that's true. Your higher ego is on the sun, or actually somewhere in between here and the sun. That's more complicated stuff. But the point is, you could just say your higher three egos are on the sun. And the more you bring in your angel nature, your archangel nature, your archai nature, your time spirit nature, you are bringing in these forces of the sun that have been held back there since the time you were created. And they are your future. And so you're inviting the future in every time you get a child to create an image in their mind. Most of us are teachers because the light that goes off that you see in a child when they have a true imagination and they go, wow, I get it. Because it's a real thought. It's a real imagination. It's a real archetype. And so when that happens, we see the light go off, right? Well, we didn't make the light go off, did we, teachers? We helped it. The light's already in there. Steiner says education is not what pouring things into people. Education means, from the Greek educare, or from the word educare, that we get education, it means to draw forth. So as you are drawing forth the higher nature of that child, teachers, you're working with their angels, archangels, and archai, and they actually are beyond you. And when your eye is working with those teenagers, it is your angel that is working with them. So in the teacher's meeting, the foundation stone, or the teacher's meeting meditation, the college meditation Steiner gave, starts off with, behind each one of you stands his angel, softly laying his hands on your head. This angel gives you the courage that you need. And then your archangel gives you the strength. Or did I get that reversed? Anyway, I haven't done it in so long, I can't remember. But then the archives bring wisdom. That's you. And when you gather together in your college, you create the Holy Grail, and you invite angels in. And when you go beyond your own nationality, you invite archangels in. And in most Waldorf schools, they teach the children 3 languages, not, like the English and 2 others or whatever. So when you do this, you're creating the Holy Grail that Steiner said would be able to carry on the threefold social order that he tried to create a political party to basically stop World War II from coming into existence. But that party did not get elected. Steiner was asked, if your party, the threefold social order, had been elected, what position would you have taken? And he said, I would have been asked to be the Minister of Education, because spirituality comes back down to, in every case that I know of, in any true spiritual teacher, starts a school and tries to redeem the future, because so much of the present seems as if it's lost. Our hope is in these children that we teach.
Thank you, Douglas.
We have about maybe 5-10 more minutes, so 2 more questions. I'd also like at the end, Douglas, if you could just give us a preview of chapter 3 and 4, because we'll be reading that for next month. Does anybody have another question? Or do we just want to hear the preview?
Well, I just had a follow-up on that the Vortices question, and I kind of got my own answer, because it's like, how do we tend that? There's this great, just cosmic mystery happening just right in our bodies, and I don't walk around with that awareness all the time. And so it's like, is there, and then of course I think, well, breathing and is the great way to tend that. That is the pulse. But is there anything, I just felt like asking if there was, I don't know, like.
These are great questions, by the way.
Tend the fire, like how do I tend that great thing? That,
Okay.
that miracle of up and down meeting in me, like how do I give it its due?
Yes, that's a great question. And all of your questions have been great. And that's why I wanted you to hear the question from the person who had it. Okay, we're told in Study of Man, one of the first things, what we teach is breathing. Not conscious breathing for the children, breathing that comes by having ritual rhythms that he says literally border on religion. He says all children from birth through 7 live in a religious environment. We're supposed to carry that religious environment into the rituals that we do with the children, seasonal festivals, your nature tables, the way that you open your day, your circle, so on and so forth. So it's these rhythms that create the proper breathing. In every psychological case I know, and I've known a lot of them, I've been in charge of schools that handled the most difficult children, every one of those children has a sleeping problem, bar none. Never met one that didn't have a sleeping problem. So making sure that the children have good sleep. So the rhythm of day and night you might take for granted, but if you don't sleep at night, you're messed up in the day and you can't teach a child who hasn't had good sleep. And then you want to look to see if they have a rosy complexion, so you know if they're eating well. And what you're doing is you're bringing all of your observations of their etheric growth, if you're in elementary, to the altar. He says education becomes an altar upon which we are making religious ritual acts to the spirit for the children so that they will learn habits that become so natural that it's like breathing. Steiner said, we don't do yoga breathing exercises in the West. We don't need to bring our consciousness to our breath. We need to bring it to the breathing that happens in karmic exchanges, the breathing that happens in sympathy and antipathy, the breathing of day and night, the breathing of the days of the week, the breathing of the seasons of the year. These are, and you take them for granted, but you guys don't because you're out in nature. So, you just had sheep shearing season, right? You have real interaction with real etheric forces. Now, I hear what you're saying, I think, and I think it's what every teacher who is humbled by the task says, how am I supposed to bring the proper response to this? Oh, it's not easy. I just put together all Steiner's educational principles from all 27 of his books, and I'll send that to you if you want it. But basically, what it's telling you is you need to be, he says, you need to be a doctor, a psychologist, a priest, a mother, a father, and then he lists this list. That's what you get to be, right? And in public school, they make you everything. They blame it all on the teachers. But in a Waldorf school, the Waldorf teacher can take that on because of staying with the children for years. You become such a part of their etheric body that it's as profound almost as their relationship with their relatives. So it's about simply realizing, and this is the good news I bring you today. You can never prepare enough, but don't stop preparing. It's because when you relax after the repairing that you get inspiration, and it's from the children's angels that you get the inspiration. It's not from your effort. Your effort creates, as he says with the Rose Cross meditation, you meditate on it incredibly hard as long as you can. Then you drop it and become 100% empty and see what the spiritual world gives you. Well, that's the deal. You can never truly prepare to deliver the Waldorf curriculum in its completeness. I've never known anyone. I've met some of the greatest Waldorf teachers that they say they are. You can't do it. All you can teach is who you are. So the children model after the way you learn. That's the reason you have to learn new lessons every day and memorize them and bring them in. They're modeling that. So if the teacher is not a learner, then you can't teach. It's not possible. They can't follow. This is, what's it called? There's a name for this in modern educational terms, and we used it. It's modeling the master teacher's way of looking at things. I forget the name of it now, but my school was based on it. We wrote the curriculum that is now used in every juvenile detention facility in America, based upon this. It's modeling the teacher. That for sure is real. So you need to prepare yourself. When you're studying these ancient periods in 5th grade, you're studying ancient India, ancient Persia, ancient Egypt, ancient Chaldea, and beginning mythology of Greek. That's for you. And then you digest it and give it to the child. So what does the child get from that? They're not going to remember the details. They're going to remember you, what you did with it. And so your pictures you put on the board, what you did in the room to make it seem as if it was the time of Greece or in Persia or whatever, it's what you do. So you cannot be prepared completely. So accept what you have, accept that you wouldn't be a teacher and the children wouldn't have accepted you if you weren't a teacher. So just accept that and accept that you are delivering who you are. So work on yourself. As one of my teachers said, the last thing he said before he left the Detroit Waldorf School is, I have 3 words for your teachers, for you teachers, and I don't want you ever to forget them. Anthroposophy, anthroposophy, anthroposophy.
Thank you.
Well, great. Could you give us a preview of chapters 3 and 4 that we'll be reading this month and
Okay.
we'll be seeing in December?
Well, Bruce, yes, those chapters get pretty, I was going to say dicey. What they do is they present historic views of the ethers. Because before I tell you Steiner's view, which is so comprehensive, which will blow your mind, of course, you got to know the way that the ancients looked at it. So I think, and strangely enough, I noticed I never put these never put chapter numbers on these. But the next one that comes up is about the eternal curriculum. And basically, the eternal curriculum is teaching what the etheric body of the child has right there before you. And you know if you're teaching it because the child responds appropriately. It's an amazing thing. Teachers all over the world found out that 4th graders love Norse myths. 5th graders love Greek myths, right? Well, that's because they need it. So the 3rd chapter is the eternal curriculum for the etheric body. So that shows you that this book was written for Waldorf teachers because this is their number 1 question. Please tell us what the ether body is. We're supposed to be teaching it. And so then the next one is the ever-changing understanding of the ethers, which just basically goes back to the beginning and gives you the historical parts of it and kind of gets you prepared for the fact that as you read these, you go, well, these are kind of complete, but they're not complete. They're not really complete. They don't directly help me apply them. And then Helena Blavatsky and the ethers, that gets complicated. Because Blavatsky is, you think Steiner's complicated? Wait till you read Blavatsky. She's so complicated that most people just give up after reading 1 page. And then her students, after that, we hear about what her students say about it. So these are going to be historical perspectives on the ethers to demonstrate that Steiner didn't make this up. He took a tradition that has been known by all clairvoyants back to the beginning of time, but he puts it into terms that we can understand. So that's what those next chapters are on.
Do you think we should just go through it chapter by chapter, 2 chapters at a time, or do you want us to skip a chapter? Or, I mean, the plan now is just to do 2 chapters each time. And then
I say 2 chapters. You guys are very advanced. You ask the deepest questions that you can ask, okay? So you're all advanced, and so you can handle that. Just remember that's history. And that's just a part of the story. Now, when we get to some of the later chapters, we may want to go 1 chapter at a time because they are very heavy.
Okay, well, thank you,
Thank you
Douglas.
very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I love it. Thank you for inviting me to your teachers' meeting. Makes me feel like a teacher again. I love you all. God bless you and your challenges.
Why don't you scan the room with your computer so you can see everybody?
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh, good.
There he is. Oh.
I'm sorry September wasn't there. I've talked with her 100 times and I've never seen her. Or Jonathan. I've never seen a picture of either one of them. So you guys look like the healthiest Waldorf school teachers I've ever seen. So God bless you.
Well, it's the lighting.
Okay.
Thank you for the book.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.